Well, as we go to air this morning, Andrew, Mountbatten-Windsor is in police custody. The former prince arrested on his 66th birthday over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
Trying to take all that in. Joining us now is Royal Editor for the Daily Mirror, Russell Myers. Rusty, good morning to you. Boy, oh boy, your reaction?
Well, it's huge. I mean, the word unprecedented has been used a fair few times over the last few years when we've been discussing big moments within the royal family. But this is truly, truly extraordinary. Just the sight of 6 unmarked police cars turning up at the King's private estate, arresting Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor on these allegations of misconduct in a public office. I mean, this is something that we absolutely did not expect to happen. You know, the veil of protection from the royal family and indeed the establishment has been wiped out completely.
There has been so much, I suppose, innuendo swirling, though, and perhaps some expectation may be building to something like this. And to be arrested now, as he has been, on suspicion of misconduct in public offices, from what I understand, there seems to be quite a threshold for police to actually lay charges and then eventually prove guilt if they can. So what more can you tell us? What do they first need to prove?
Well, first of all, let's look at the allegations, because there are 2 sets of allegations that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is facing. First of all, the arrest today is about misconduct in a public office, and that relates to his time as a trade envoy for the British government. There are allegations that he passed on confidential information to not only Jeffrey Epstein, but potentially other people he was connected with. That information could have been used to extend their finances. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein has incredible finances at his disposal. The other set of allegations, which I think further police forces are looking into, relates to potential sex trafficking from Jeffrey Epstein and whether Andrew was involved in that, and whether he brought people into royal residences who had been brought into the country from Jeffrey Epstein. So there is an awful lot of play here. There are 9 police forces in the UK who said they are separately assessing different allegations. But as you say, Andrew is in custody tonight. The police have completely lots at their disposal. They can take his fingerprints, they can take his DNA, his picture as well. And I just think that tells you the enormity of this situation.
Yeah, a mugshot. Look, as Sarah points out, there's a threshold here in order for police to lay charges, and there is a search being done on multiple residences. Is there any likelihood that that will include Buckingham Palace at some point?
Well, certainly, I think that you look at the searches that are taking place, first of all, at his new residence, which is just his temporary residence, because after being kicked out of Royal Lodge on the Windsor estate, which is also being searched this evening by police officers, he is currently staying at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate, which is where the late Duke of Edinburgh saw out the last of his days. Now, the police have said that obviously this is a fast-moving investigation. We saw that statement last week from the King, and Buckingham Palace said that they will be assisting police in whatever investigation they want to launch. So nothing is off the table. Certainly the police will want to look at emails. They will want to look at public, private records of people coming and going from all the palaces. So as I said, I think these 2 investigations, or multiple investigations, that are running alongside each other are moving very, very quickly, and they will no doubt involve many, many residents and many, many people within the royal fold.
It also seems as though the police acted quite quickly here and that there was no heads up given to anyone within the royal family. We know that we've seen that response from the King in that statement that he released, which was very carefully worded, didn't refer to Andrew as his brother or anything like that, and he signed it off as Charles R. Very careful indeed by the royal family at this point.
Well, it's such a sensitive situation. Certainly the royal family, the King, the palace, will not want to be prejudicing any type of investigation. While the police didn't tell the royal family, I understand tonight that there are just recent reports coming out that Thames Valley Police in the Windsor area did indeed let the Home Office know what course of action they were going to take. Now, there are questions to be asked here, because why did they feel the need to tell the Home Office? Certainly, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said just today that he believes that Andrew should be facing questioning if indeed he has evidence to give. So, again, I think the royals are trying to get on the front foot with this. We've seen the statement from the King. He's pretty much said that any kind of legal matter must be pursued in the correct manner. But this is just not a personal matter. matter for Andrew or the King. This matter involves the wider institution, and I think it's incredibly, incredibly damaging.
Look, there's so much to digest. I've got 100 more questions. We'll get you back a little bit later. I'm sure you have those questions as well, Rusty. Thank you so much for being on at this
Rusty.
point, and we'll talk to you in a little bit. Thank you. Any more now on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's bombshell arrest. The former prince just released from police custody without charge after 12 hours of questioning. That was the photo. Let's bring in Royal Editor for the Daily Mirror, Russell Myers. Rusty, this story moving pretty fast, even though he was in custody for some time. Your reaction to those images and the story in general?
Well, what can you say? It's just an extraordinary image after an extraordinary day of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor lying in the back seat of a car, attempting to hide from the photographers who'd been waiting outside the police station. And it paints a pretty sorry picture, doesn't it? So the police arrived on the King's estate earlier this morning, and he has been in custody for 12 hours. The allegations are misconduct in a public office, very, very serious allegations indeed. And it'll be very interesting to see what shape this investigation takes from now.
Well, at the upper end of it, it's life in prison, but a hard one to convict on. Sarah's going to be talking to Dr. Tom Frost in a second about the legal ramifications of all of this. But let's talk reaction. Reaction right across the UK, reaction from the family itself.
Well, certainly, I don't think the King could have been clearer by, let me state clearly that the law must take its course. And certainly there have been allegations that Andrew has been protected in the past by the family. Certainly the late Queen didn't want him exiled from the royal family. Prince William was a huge voice in that time. It took King Charles another 5 years to exile him, but he did take that course of action. But as we've seen recently, the sense of public reaction to this has been extraordinary. King Charles been heckled in the street, the same as the Queen when she was turning up to a school last week. There is a real feeling here that not enough has been done. So that's why the police forces are doing everything they can to make sure that this is addressed appropriately.
Rusty, these allegations, well, they go back 16 years when he was trade envoy for, 10 years. I guess the question is, and look, there is reports this morning that the Queen wanted him to be in that position and the King didn't at the time. But regardless of all of that and all the fallout, what he has to answer, what the royal family knew, what may have been covered up, all comes into it now.
Well, it does. And I think, clearly you can look at Andrew's reputation. He has always had a reputation as a bully, somebody who didn't have any respect for authority. Countless people I've spoken to over the years, whether that's royal insiders or people connected to being diplomats, they always had bad things to say about him. There is very, very difficult to find anyone who, even before this scandal really reared its head, really had a good word to say about him. Why was that attitude allowed to be expressed within the palace? And who else has questions to answer? Are there police protection officers that went with him to certain places connected to Jeffrey Epstein? Was anyone aware of what he was passing on confidentially? These allegations are very serious and they'll have to be looked into. So I think this will be a very, very wide investigation, and certainly we've only seen the start of it.
Well, the investigation may include Buckingham Palace, as well as other assets inside the royal family. The King and Queen were out and about today. People were shouting at them as they have done, as you pointed out, over the last little bit. So how he thinks he can get clear air here, I mean, this investigation may take, months. So how does the royal family actually get clear air without continuing to damage reputation?
Well, you're certainly right. It may take months, but there'll be huge pressure on Thames Valley Police and the other individual police forces who are looking into other allegations. Now, could you even imagine a situation where the late Queen was heckled in public? I mean, I certainly can't. And I think this is a watershed moment for the royal family. If you look at it in isolation of what the King has done, certainly people close to him have said to me, what else could he have done? He has stripped his brother of all his titles. He has removed him from his luxury mansion. He is not having any effect on the public purse. And now he has said that the law must take its course. But I think the sense of damage at the palace is, cannot be underestimated here. This is very, very serious. And I think ultimately this really could be a defining moment in King Charles's reign.
That is for certain. Rusty, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Says.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, for that legal context now, let's bring in legal expert Dr. Tom Frost. Doc, thanks so much for your time. Well, now that Andrew has been released, what are the authorities' next steps?
So I think it's important to state that he's been released under investigation, which means he hasn't been charged yet. But this allows the authorities to continue investigating the offence, and he can be charged at any point in the future. There's no time limit on that. This is quite normal for an accusation of, say, a financial crime.
So 12 hours they held him for. It seems like a long time. Would they have exhausted all avenues of inquiry at this point? Could there be more in terms of perhaps what they learn once they've searched those residents, including potentially Buckingham Palace?
Absolutely. This is just the start of the investigation. When you're arrested in England and Wales, you can be held for an initial 24 hours. It's very normal in these kind of complex cases to release an individual under investigation, especially if there are financial records or, as we've seen with the Epstein files, a huge amount of documentation to read and process.
All right, well, Dr. Tom Frost, just as far as you can, take us inside this interview that would have happened with Andrew today over the 12 hours. What exactly would police have been probing?
Well, the first thing that would have happened is he would have been read his rights. He would have been told he had the right to remain silent, and he would have been told that anything he can say may well be used in evidence against him, just like anyone who's arrested in this country. They may well have explained the reason for the arrest, the initial evidence that they're working from, and they would have explained to him why his properties are being searched. If you arrest someone, it enables the police to search their properties for evidence. This may be another reason why this police force has taken this course of action. I would have expected a lawyer to be present when the police were asking him questions. They may have been very high-level questions. They may have been ascertaining general facts about the investigation and about his time as trade envoy, which this seems to relate to. We won't yet know his answers to those questions.
The trade envoy, I guess, is central really to all of this, isn't it? Because it's such a high threshold for police to prove any kind of wrongdoing here. I mean, he was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. So the public office part is the first port of call for them.
Yes, so this is a really old offence. I mean, it dates back to at least the 18th century. As a trade envoy, he was acting on behalf of the government, so he would have been a public official. What you have to prove is that the individual didn't just commit misconduct, but the misconduct was so bad as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust. So it's a very high level for prosecution. One of the ironies behind this is that the Director of Public Prosecutions, who's the head of the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK, announced in 2009 that there's a very high threshold for this offence, and that Director of Public Prosecutions was Keir Starmer at the time.